At Texas Children's Hospital in Houston, there is much more than meets the eye. Because past the exam rooms, inside this lab, lies what they believe to be the potential silver bullet for taking down COVID-19.
Our lab is the United Nations of Science.
A team of doctors, led by Dr. Peter Hotez and Dr. Maria Elena Batazzi, has dedicated their careers to finding a solution to fill a critical vaccination gap.
Look, Delta arose out of an unvaccinated population in India at the beginning of last year, and then Omicron arose out of an unvaccinated population out of southern Africa. So Mother Nature is telling us what's going to happen as long as we refuse to vaccinate the world's low and middle income countries.
With $7 million mostly provided by philanthropists, the duo turned to an old answer to solve a new problem. Crafting a vaccine inside Texas Children's they're calling a game changer, one they say they don't own the intellectual property for.
It's a similar technology to that's used to make the recombinant hepatitis B vaccine. It's known as microbial fermentation in yeast. It's actually a vegan vaccine. No human cells, no human proteins, no animal cells, no animal proteins.
The technology important because it's existed for decades, allowing multiple low-income countries to produce their own vaccine without intellectual property obstacles or waiting for donated shipments of Pfizer or Moderna's vaccine that often arrive too late to make a serious difference.
So when a country receives your starter kit, what essentially are they able to do with that?
We don't only give them the starter kit, but we give them the recipe of how to brew the starter kit. You know, it's yeast, so it's a little bit analogy of brewing beer, right?
The comparison closer than you think.
This is where we cook it up.
Yeast is actually fermented inside these medical-grade bioreactors. But instead of producing alcohol, the Texas Children's team says they've engineered each kit to produce proteins, which mimics the COVID-19 virus. The first step for each kit recipient to making their own vaccine.
They get a recipe. They get a toolbox of tests to ensure the quality, the yield, the purity. And then they get us plus our team that if you have a question, you just pick up the phone.
What sets the vaccine created in this very Texas Children's lab apart isn't just how it's made, but why. There is no patent. That means that a company anywhere in the world can scale it unlike anything we've seen.
In fact, in India, Corbevax has secured emergency use authorization after completing 2 phase 3 clinical trials.
The great thing about it is there's no limit to the amount you can make. It's got one of the best safety profiles of any vaccine out there for COVID-19. Simple refrigeration storage. You don't need any freezers to store the vaccine. Pristine safety profile and probably the lowest cost vaccine.
Corbevax is being distributed outside of the U.S. and currently isn't FDA approved. But perhaps the most important of all, the accessibility the Texas Children's vaccine offers. By not having a patent, paving the way for partners worldwide.
What makes the patent-free vaccines unique is that companies can produce the vaccine without worrying about legal challenges and huge financial losses.
Now, with the pandemic entering year 3, experts say the global healthcare gap, especially with vaccines, has become more exposed than ever.
This is the greatest moral failure of our lifetimes, and we can't let this happen again. We have to have a world that is much more effective against preventing and responding to pandemics, and we have to have a world that's fair, more equitable, and just. And that's a global imperative.
Morgan is with us now to talk more about this. It's such great reporting, Morgan. Thank you, and we're glad you're bringing it to us. I have to wonder about the scaling up piece of this, right? Because this is a challenge really for any company, right? When you have something like India, for example, ordering 300 million doses into production. Can you talk a little bit about how the production rollout is expected to happen and how that could work?
Yeah, Hallie, it's certainly ambitious, right? But the key thing here that Dr. Hotez says that will make such a big difference is the fact that this is older, proven technology that's already in the hands of some of these developing countries who may not be able to produce those Pfizer or Moderna vaccines that essentially require cutting-edge tech. He says a country like Brazil, for example, already has the tools in place, those bioreactors available to where they can, as they likened it to, kind of brew up this vaccine and then rapidly reproduce it in order to scale up as much as they can. In India, for example, that company, it's already being used with an emergency use authorization. We don't have an exact number on how many doses have already been administered there, but their goal is to have, as you mentioned, millions of doses by the end of this year available. possible. However, the key thing here to remember is that it's not one area or one country in particular that will hold the answer here, Hallie, but Africa, for example, just one region there, if left unvaccinated, could become the perfect ground for a new variant to come out. And that is why they say they didn't have a patent on this. That's why they're hoping that this can spread as quickly as possible to some of those worldwide partners, because the sooner that an individual can even have one dose of the vaccine, much less 2 or 3, as you and I have likely had with a booster, the sooner that those variants can start to diminish and COVID-19 can stop being such a life-changing issue as it has been for the last 3 years.
It's, you know, Morgan, we talk so much about it, and we hear so much from health experts in this country about getting people here vaccinated, but this has to be, as you point out in this piece, it's got to be a global fight, right? Because if not, you're just going to continue to get these variants churning through. Morgan Chesky, it is great to see you live for us with tonight's original. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.